Hello and welcome to this edition of Africa Speaks. I'm Joy Darimbira. It's been a bittersweet week with the death of one of the world's most intelligent men, Professor Ali Mazrui. And of course, we did take some time to ask you to send in your video tributes of one of Africa's greatest sons. And here are some of them.
President Uhuru Kenyatta says, "I'm saddened by the death of Professor Ali Mazrui, a towering academician whose contributions played a major role in shaping African scholarship. Professor Mazrui's brilliance raised him to the apex of scholarly distinction and earned him respect and following among his peers globally. Professor Mazrui's literary works, debates, and relentless cultivation of a global view of Africa have helped tell the continent's story. Professor Mazrui's legacy and commitment to intellectual advancement will always remain etched in Kenya's minds. My thoughts and prayers are with his family at this time of grief. I pray that God grants you the strength and courage to bear this tragic loss." Tanzania's Deputy Communication Minister says, "Rest in peace, Professor Ali Mazrui, one of Africa's greats, who taught me to appreciate and value Africa's complex identity and multiple heritages." Senator Hassan Omar Hassan of Mombasa County, also Professor Mazrui's hometown, adds, "We will miss Professor Ali Mazrui, Mjomba, as we fondly referred to him, a true mentor, a friend, a personal advisor." Alan Senyonga from Uganda adds, "Rest in peace, Professor Ali Mazrui. You taught and inspired many. East Africa, Africa, and the world at large will forever be grateful for your works." Al-Amin Kimathi regrets sad news this about the passing on of Professor Ali Mazrui, one of Africa's greatest scholars of our time.
And so just who was this man that many knew only through his documentation on Africa and his strong opinion about African leadership? We're now joined by the grandnephew of the late Professor Ali Mazrui, who is joining us now live from Mombasa. And well, it's good to have you on the show this morning. I would like to find out from you, as relatives of the late Professor Ali Mazrui and as a family, how best are you going to remember the professor?
Well, Professor Ali Mazrui is remembered the world over as a great academician who has achieved tremendous feat. And as a family, we also remember him in that light. And he has, in the process, inspired quite a lot of family members in the later generations who have gone on to excel also in different fields of academic endeavor. There was Professor Al-Amin Mazrui, who followed in his footsteps as a writer, but the family has also produced different professionals, including doctors, lawyers, accountants, bankers, and engineers. But above all that, we remember him as a person with exemplary character, which is not seen by the greater public. As a person, Professor Ali Mazrui was very humble. In fact, I don't know of any person with so much prominence who is so humble. He was also very loving, very caring, very generous, very considerate, and he combined all these aspects which are an inspiration to all of us. We miss him dearly as a very loving family member who always took interest in every family matter.
Just like you put it, he took part in every family matter. But how different was Professor Mazrui, the academician, from the professor, the family man?
Well, Professor Ali Mazrui is a global figure, and I think that stands him out above every other member of the family. He achieved a feat which surpassed his father and forefathers, who were also great scholars, but he went global, and I think that is what stands him out from the rest of us.
All right, and now would also like to know, what legacy does he leave behind, and would also like you to, enlighten us more on the burial arrangements. We know that he's meant to be buried tomorrow, but then what exactly are the details of where and what time he's going to be buried?
Well, mainly in the greater public, he has inspired quite a number of people. He has left behind several books, more than 30 books, from which a lot of people will benefit from. And as a family, he has left a legacy of trying to unify and continue in his footsteps to try and bring, fostering and continue the love with which he has shown all of us.
All right, and on to my last question. Mohammed would also like to know what the burial arrangements are for the late Professor Ali Mazrui.
The body of the professor has already left the United States last night aboard Turkish Airlines on its way to Istanbul. We are expecting that it will leave Istanbul later this evening, and we expect it to arrive at 3 a.m. In the morning in Mombasa. We will receive the body at the Moi International Airport, Mombasa, and take it to our home in Old Town, Kibokoni, where it will be kept until 9:30 o'clock in the morning, where we will proceed to the Mbaruk Mosque next to the Central Police Station for the formal burial prayers, after which we will proceed to the Mazrui Cemetery at the Fort Jesus, where we will lay him to rest, inshallah.
Well, thank you very much, Mohammed Mazrui. That is the grandnephew of the late Professor Ali Mazrui, who passed away earlier this week, and he's meant to be buried tomorrow at 11 a.m. and that is going to be at the Mazrui Cemetery. The Mazrui Cemetery is said to be about 800 years old, and it actually happens to be one of those areas, very historic, right opposite the Fort Jesus in Mombasa, that is in Kenya. Now let's take a look at the other top stories from across Africa.
Former UN Secretary General is disappointed with the international community's response towards the fight against Ebola. Ebola is fast spreading beyond Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, the three countries most affected by the Ebola virus, to Nigeria, Spain, and the United States. While the World Health Organization is set to pump up measures to prevent it, 15 other African countries are to receive help to prevent and protect their citizens. The most recent official figure from the World Health Organization puts the number of deaths at 4,493, and Ebola cases now stand at 8,997, including suspected, confirmed, and probable cases. Meanwhile, as at 7th of October 2014, there have been 71 cases, 31 confirmed, 26 probable, 14 suspected Ebola virus disease cases reported in the Democratic Republic of Congo, including 8 among healthcare workers. This outbreak is unrelated to that affecting Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, Senegal, and Sierra Leone, Spain, as well as the United States of America. The Ebola virus, first discovered in 1976, does not have a definite cure to date. Mozambique went to the polls on Wednesday, with the main opposition party rejecting the results of presidential and parliamentary elections, adding that they were marred with irregularities and asked that the elections be annulled. Filipe Nyusi from the ruling Frelimo party led with 63% of the vote, ahead of Renamo's Afonso with 30%. Sporadic cases of violence were reported at counting centers in parts of Mozambique, with police spraying tear gas to disperse the violent rioting crowds. If a truce agreed upon between Nigeria's military and Islamist terror group Boko Haram is anything to go by, the kidnapped Nigerian Chibok girls could soon be released. According to Nigeria's Chief of Defense, Alex Bade, the date for the girls' release will soon be disclosed. Recently, the Nigerian military claimed they had killed Boko Haram's leader Abubakar Shekau, a claim disputed by the leader in a video circulated online. The Nigerian military has struggled to defeat Boko Haram, that has been waging an insurgency in Nigeria since 2009. And still keeping it in Nigeria, Shaibu Amadu is Nigeria's new national football coach, replacing Stephen Keshi. The decision made by the country's football federation comes after Stephen Keshi, who has all while worked with no contract, led Nigeria to a 3-1 win over Sudan in their last AFCON qualifier. Shaibu's new position as coach could also be replaced by a permanent foreign coach after the November qualifier games, where Nigeria will play Congo and South Africa respectively. Prosecutor on Friday made one final demand that Oscar Pistorius be jailed for no less than 10 years as his family continued to show their unwavering support for the disgraced athlete. On what was another emotional day in court, both teams of lawyers had one final chance to convince the judge to hand down the stiffest possible prison term for killing his girlfriend or let him walk free. It began with defense lawyer Barry Rokes painting a picture of Pistorius as a man who had already suffered enough for shooting River Steenkamp, an epic fall from grace of a sporting icon, now reduced to a broken man left with nothing. It finished with prosecutor Gary Nell insisting that society would not settle for anything less than a sentence of 10 years behind bars, prompting gasps from the Pistorius family.
And those are some of the top stories from across the continent. Now, Africa is said to be the richest continent across the world, yet the population seems unaware or even a little ignorant of some of this wealth. Today on Click, we boast of the uniqueness of Lake Bogoria's hot springs in Kenya.
Lake Bogoria is home at times to one of the world's largest populations of laser flamingos and the largest number of geysers in Africa. What's amazing, though, is the geothermal activity in the form of hot springs located on the western shore that boil constantly, showing periodic geyser-like eruptions. The spring waters are sodium bicarbonate. Africa Speaks took a moment to boil some eggs at the springs, and in 10 minutes they were ready to eat.
Well, there we go. It actually was an interesting trip that I took to Lake Bogoria. That was last weekend, and it was just amazing. You know, you go out there and a lot of people lack hot water, but when you go to these hot springs, you know, you can do anything while you're there. And the fact that a lot of people use that water for natural healing is even what makes it more amazing. And now we'll take a short break. When we return, we're going to be speaking about the role of civil society organizations in Africa, their relevance, their challenges, and also how exactly they can be able to help citizens across the African continent and just wipe out, can I say, the stereotype that a lot of people across Africa have around civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations. Do stay with us. Over the years, civil society organizations have increased in number across the African continent, most of them fronting the face of advocating for respect of human rights. But are you content with the role of thousands of civil societies across the 54 African countries? That is the question that we are asking. And of course, we are yet to be joined by Vitalis Major, who is the coordinator, reality of Aid Africa Network, a development policy analysis specialist in the areas of development cooperation, economic development, poverty reduction policies, and also microfinance relating to NGOs, government and intergovernmental organizations. So at this point in time, what we're looking at is a situation where a lot of people across Africa do not even understand the role of civil society organizations, what they are, what they stand for, and the key or basic role that civil society organizations play across African nations is that they represent citizens, especially when it comes to them being aware of their basic human rights. And being aware of basic human rights is not something that at least not every African citizen is aware of. And so we're asking you, are you content? Are you satisfied with the role played by civil society organizations across your country? Is it Kenya? Is it Uganda? You know, is it Rwanda or any other country across the African continent? Are you content with the role played by civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations? Would like to hear from you. You can use the hashtag Africa Speaks, and you can also use my Twitter handle, that is @JoyDorinBira. And of course, the reality that most of them front the face of, representing citizens across the African continent is one that not many understand. And in this day and age where we're having a lot of them, coming up, not just CSOs, but we're also having NGOs that are cropping up across Africa, are you content with the role that they're playing? A while back, there's a study that said that most of the non-governmental organizations in Africa are actually playing a role of more of marketing agencies as compared to non-governmental organizations, because what they do is they come here and do market studies for companies or international companies, and then return these studies to either the Western world or something, or to their funders, and then we see new companies coming in now to start up across the African continent, which is not something that they actually stand for. And so there's a lot of questions that surround the role of civil societies across Africa. So like I said, do send us your views under the hashtag Africa Speaks, and we'll be able to go through some of those views of yours. Let me just take a look at what some of you are saying. Anthony Ndungu is saying, with the Twitter handle @TonyRX, you're saying, as long as policies and modus operandi of NGOs are not Afrocentric in all aspects, questions around their role will always abound. And we also have Eric Machango, who is saying this is an interesting and timely theme at this point, and it can only be one that we need to understand even better. And we also have one coming in here from Stephen Svets M1, who is saying, well, we have a lot of unaware people across Africa, and that is something that also needs to be looked into. What are civil society organizations doing to create awareness of people's basic human rights across Africa? And well, shortly we're going to speak to the coordinator for Reality Aid for Africa, and he's going to be telling us more about the role and how to coordinate the different civil society organizations in just a short while. So do stay with us as we try to get to him. I think he was also stuck up in the traffic snarl-up this morning that actually destabilized the entire city. So do stay with us. We'll now take a brief break, and we'll be back shortly to speak to Vitalis Major, the coordinator for Reality Aid Africa Network. Do stay with us. Welcome back, and like I mentioned, we have Vitalis Major, who is the coordinator for Reality of Aid Africa Network, that is a Pan-African network working on poverty eradication through effective development cooperation. So welcome to the show, and just to enlighten us, are civil society organizations helping in creating awareness at all?
I think they are doing a lot of capacity building and civic education for citizens across Africa, not only in terms of claiming their rights, but also in terms of holding government to account and putting political pressure on them to be accountable and more effective in delivering development.
Right. And despite the growth of, civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations, what we continue to see is an ignorant rural African population.
Yes.
So ignorant of their rights, of their entitlements, and of course, of so many other things,
yes.
like what exactly they need or what they need to have in order for them to live the basic of lives. So what's your comment in regard to the fact that we're having very idle civil society organizations and some NGOs as well?
Well, like I said, our roles are particularly to do with building capacity and civic education, but also there are those civil society organizations that work on development, and they initiate various development projects, including also offering humanitarian assistance to affected populations. But I think we need to understand that the fundamental role for development actually lies with the government and the kind of policies it puts in place in order to facilitate even civil society organizations to be effective. For example, you can talk about some areas not being reached by civil society when there is insecurity. You can't talk about underdevelopment when governments are increasingly, shrinking the space for civil society in order to be more effective. So we have to look at these elements in a very comprehensive view. And indeed, what we are looking for is how do civil society in Africa particularly partner with their governments to deliver development to the people. And what we are seeing increasingly is a scenario where there's antagonism with the political class feeling threatened by civil society, and so they're developing, very stringent laws that don't facilitate civil society operations.
Right. And now knowing that you mentioned that, how exactly can they reflect the priorities of the people in development strategies, that is, in Africa as a whole? How exactly can they do that?
I think from where we are seated, we think that in terms of development, it is government to partner with the citizens and other relevant organizations in order to deliver development. And what we are trying to promote, indeed, is through a framework that is called democratic ownership. And in this regard of development process, in this regard, I think what we are looking at is how do governments create space for citizens to be able to participate in development planning? How do we engage citizens in budget making process? How does government become transparent on development budgets that indeed affect the daily livelihoods of the people? And there's still a lot of work that we need to do in there in order to bring on board citizens to engage, because at the moment the notion is government is supposed to deliver development but without the voices of the citizens themselves.
Let's make this very clear and very briefly. What is the difference between civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations?
Well, there's no very big difference. The non-governmental organization is in fact part and parcel of civil society organization. So civil society organization is a very broad group that includes also the trade unions. It also includes the faith-based organizations, but non-governmental organizations are captured within a specific act where there's certain functions that they're supposed to do, and it's very restricted in law. But when you talk about civil society organization, it's all these groups that operate in the non-profit area for purposes of enhancing either membership interest or the general populace.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming to speak to us and enlightening us more about the role of civil society organizations. We've been speaking to Vitalis Major, who is the coordinator for Reality for Aid Africa Network, and that is a Pan-African organization there. I'll wind up with one tweet here from SVETS M1, who is saying civil societies play a key role, but they sleep with politicians, and they lose their purpose and mandate. Well, thank you so much for watching this edition of Africa Speaks. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. God bless.